Good day, everyone. This is Chris back again with the Ancient Scholar. We are going to talk about fluid and electrolyte part 2, and we'll begin talking about the electrolytes. So, just talking a little bit about the normal fluid balance in the body. The way that the body detects fluid alterations is really through three primary mechanisms. There's something called the volume-sensitive receptors, and these are generally located in the aortic arch. And when the body becomes overloaded, there's too much fluid, they're stretching, and those stretch receptors pick up on the fact that, oh, this is stretching a bit too much, and that sends a signal to the brain, and through some mechanisms that we'll talk about a little later on, the brain will tell the kidneys, hey, kidneys, get rid of some fluid for me. Okay, so those are the volume-sensitive or stretch receptors. We also have something called baroreceptors. So stretch receptors, baroreceptors. Baroreceptors are located in the carotid arteries. These receptors pick up on pressure. So not stretching, but blood pressure. And when they sense that the blood pressure is, say, too low, they tell the brain, hey, the blood pressure is a little too low, whatever. And then through a variety of mechanisms, the brain tells the kidneys, hey, quit excreting water, hold on to water, get our fluid volume status back up and increase the blood pressure. And then the last but not least is something called osmoreceptors. These are located generally in the brain, in the hypothalamus gland, and they detect the actual concentration of solute in the blood, and they actually detect the osmolarity of the blood. And if it's hyperosmolar or hypoosmolar, those receptors obviously are right in the brain, in the pituitary hypothalamus gland, excuse me, and hypothalamus and pituitary gland are kind of married anyway. But anyway, they will then, through a variety of mechanisms, cause the body to try and fix the fluid electrolyte status. Okay, so we know these receptors play a role, and we know that the kidneys play a very critical role in both fluid and electrolyte management. So when the kidneys aren't working, such as what we call renal failure, where the kidneys completely fail, lots of patients have renal failure. It's a pretty common thing. It's related to lots of trauma, shock, chemical injuries, certain medications, surgeries, diabetics, hypertensive patients that are hypertensive for a long time. Hey, there goes the clock again. All of these conditions can cause renal failure. You have two types of renal failure. You have chronic renal failure, which is ongoing renal failure. Generally, these patients go on and on for years. And then we have acute renal failure, which is generally an acute situation that may or may not become chronic renal failure. Renal failure is a very important concern for us in respiratory, because if the body can't get rid of fluid effectively, that fluid can then what? Well, it can be retained, and it can ultimately lead to fluid collecting in the lungs, what we call pulmonary edema, and that can be very problematic for us. Also, the kidneys secrete a hormone called erythropoietin, which stimulates red blood cell production. If the kidneys aren't working very well, often patients that are in renal failure will be anemic, and that is to say that they don't have a whole lot of red blood cells. They're anemic. We know that red blood cells transport oxygen, and we know that these patients may not be able to transport oxygen as well, and that will be a concern for us as respiratory therapists. And you guys will learn that a little more when we start doing CaO2 oxygen content calculations, and we'll realize just how important functional red blood cells, how important a role that they play. Okay, so there's something called the renin-angiotensin-aldosterone system, the RAAS. I'm going to talk about it separately in a video on negative feedback mechanisms, so I will get there. Okay, let's go ahead and talk about the major electrolytes. The major electrolytes that we need to be aware of in respiratory care include sodium, potassium, calcium, and magnesium. There are lots of other electrolytes. An electrolyte is anything that becomes charged in the body. And we know sodium, potassium, calcium, and magnesium are all positively charged metals. Chloride, which is a negatively charged chlorine, is also an electrolyte. but chloride generally will follow sodium. If sodium's low, chloride will be low. Let's just go ahead and talk about these electrolytes in a general sense. So sodium, the normal concentration of sodium in the body is 135 to 145 milliequivalents per liter, MEQ per liter. An equivalent is, we talked about this a little earlier, an equivalent per liter is just 1 mole, 1 mole times 1 charge in a liter. So a milliequivalent is 1,000th of an equivalent. So normal serum sodium is 135 to 145. Well, that'd be 135 thousandths of an equivalent. So we're talking, small fractions of a mole times charge in a liter. Okay, if I have too much sodium, that's called hypernatremia. Greater than 145, that's called hypernatremia, and that is a hypertonic environment in the body. That means that the cells are fluid's probably shifting out of the cells into the vascular space, and they could become dehydrated. Or your patient's already dehydrated, and that's what's causing the hypernatremia. Hyponatremia is low sodium, less than 135. This can mean that fluid is maybe shifted out of the cells, and it's diluted the sodium in the vascular space. Maybe the patient has drank too much water, something called water toxicity. It's common in people that rave and take a drug called ecstasy, and they drink a lot of water, and they drink copious amounts of water. They develop water toxicity, and some people have died from water toxicity. In certain contests where you, what was it, the contest a year or so ago, Pee for a Wee, where you had to drink lots of water and you had to hold it in, and if you were the last person to urinate, apparently you won a wee, and a lady died, and what she died from was hyponatremia. Her sodium became diluted out. Her cells were in a hypotonic environment. Fluid shifted into the cells and obviously caused her cerebral edema, seizures, and she ended up dying of massive swelling of the brain. So both hyper and hyponatremia are concerning.